Well, everybody, welcome back to the channel. And today is one of those epic days. Today is the day that Twinmotion 2024.1, the full version, gets released. And wow, we've got some incredible new features to look at. Now, I know some of you have seen the preview version. Just wait until you see this final release though. So there's amazing features, things like the new placement tools, as you can see in the video below. And I'll be checking these out with some of my own videos as well. Now, these really make time-saving sort of maneuvers, and you can place anything from trees to furniture to people as well. Absolutely astounding new technology here. One of the other really lovely features is things like the lighting and the rain, and everything else has been improved. We're now based on Unreal 5.4, the very latest version as well. You've got amazing control over things like foliage as well from imported trees. You can change the colors, the seasons, and all of the tones of the leaves now. So this is something that will really help landscape designers and urban designers visualizing those landscapes as well. We've got some amazing new tools for sequencing. Basically, this means that you can create incredible stories using Twinmotion, literally become your own film director and time all the assets as required. So these new cameras and things like the Filmbacks, combined with also bloom and lens flares effects, really bring some amazing cinematic quality. Finally, one of the big ones that I've been after for a while, now we can render using layers. This means that you can finally composite your images using, say, Photoshop or your favorite image editor, and basically tweak those renders without having to re-render them. So the best news of all, Twinmotion is now completely free for the majority of users. If you earn or turn over less than $1 million, you can get it for free. The only function that isn't there is the cloud function, which is something I would recommend if you're a professional user. So if you are, reach out to me. I'm a reseller for Twinmotion. I would love to provide Twinmotion training for you online all over the world to help you learn this amazing software. I've written a couple of books and one of them on Twinmotion recently. So I look forward to hearing from you, and let's jump into the video and look at these amazing, incredible new features. So let's get started with this new Twinmotion 2024.1 new features video. So before you get started, just make sure that your computer is updated and can handle Unreal Engine 5.4. There's some system requirements you should be aware of. Now, here is a list of some of the most amazing new features you're going to find in Twinmotion. We're going to focus mainly on this first batch for this particular video, and I hope to be making lots more videos soon. So one of our very first new features we're going to talk about is the wonderful spacing and area tools. This means that you can basically really quickly populate an area, and I'm going to run through a little tutorial on how this works to show you how I made this wonderful scene right in front of you with this castle in this beautiful landscape. So let's run through this together. So as you know, if you followed my channel for a while, I'm a big fan of Twinmotion, but also Vectorworks is my chosen design software. And do check out my other videos where I actually showed you how to model up this wonderful Castel de Monte. And basically, I'm going to go and export this as a Datasmith file. So Twinmotion imports obviously Datasmith perfectly. So it's a really nice format. So I'm just going to go ahead and basically click import. Let me just delete the previous one first. Going to click on the plus sign and open that Datasmith file, just to bring it into the scene that I'm working with. Now this scene, if you're not sure where to find this, this is going to be available on the templates. So this is one of the Icelandic templates. You can see that my castle has now landed in my scene in the sort of default location, but I'm actually going to move it over to this sort of zone here where we've got some bit of blank space basically, so I can kind of work with this a bit more. Now the really nice thing is the entire model comes in as one asset, and from here I can basically bring it in, rotate it, and position it exactly where I want to. So I'm going to go through and of course get some nice materials. I think we're going to try some stone, seems like the appropriate material for our castle. Just kind of have a look at that and see if I can kind of actually choose a really nice material that I like. I'm not 100% sure about that, so I think I'm going to swap over to this more rustic stone, go into the material editor and simply basically scale it right down. So it's starting to look pretty good already, and you can see if I get a bit of grunge on there, that will really help with the realism. Things like grunge make the material look a bit more weathered and so on as well. Okay, so we're happy with our position of our castle. Let me just kind of select it and go to the populate tool. So the first one we're going to use is the area spacing tool. So with this, all I need to do is go over to my Dropbox, find some trees, for example. I'm going to run down and find some appropriate trees. I like these nice sort of pine trees, feel like the appropriate ones for this landscape. So I'm going to drag a selection of those into the Dropbox. You basically drag them across the screen, which does seem a little bit odd, but once they're in the Dropbox, they're kind of ready to use. Then you select them all, get the pen, and basically now you just go for it and just draw all across the landscape. You'll notice that I can also sort of move while I'm kind of drawing, so it's very easy to populate. And as soon as I click escape, those trees get basically placed around the path that I've drawn. Now we have a lot of control over the path. We can make it a bit broader, we can change the curvature and things like this as well. But most importantly, we can vary the amount and the count of each of those trees, just to create a really nice randomized selection. What I really love about this is you can keep moving the path and it will kind of snap basically to the landscape as you move it around. So I'm just going to tweak the position of my castle just to sort of settle it into that landscape a bit more and rotate it around a little bit, and let's just move its position a tiny bit as well. Good, okay, so it's looking pretty good already. Now wait and see this. I'm going to go back to my populate panel. This time I'm actually going to go and do an area population. So I'm going to kind of draw a really nice big area. This time I'm actually drawing it before I place the objects, and that's fine. So now when I actually drag the trees in, immediately they kind of spawn into that area. And you can see that as I drag in a mixture of those trees, it will kind of start to randomly place different versions. I love the fact that I can hold the shift key down and drag off a copy of that tree group, if you like, and it snaps to the geometry. So look at that on that mountaintop, how it refits to the geometry intelligently. So I can kind of drag it to any other part of the landscape and basically start altering it as required. But I know, confidently that those groups of trees will basically snap to the appropriate landscape there. So this really is absolutely incredible technology. And what's really, really nice about this is I can basically just draw as many of these areas as I like and have slightly different mixtures of things like trees and things. So let's just drag in a couple more different types of trees into this Dropbox. And you can see that you can really vary the density. Now we've got lots of things like probability and things like edge fall off as well. I did make another video on this actually, which was a really nice sort of automotive video. So if you're into your cars, particularly the Audi R8, do check out that video on my channel. It was a really fun video to make. But already within a few minutes, you can see our scene is really coming together in terms of the way it looks with our population of areas and placement of trees. So I'm basically going to do a final bit of tweaking and I think we're almost done on this landscape. I fancy just having another path. This time I'm actually going to place some trees kind of leading up to the entrance, if you like. So this sort of thing would have been, much more fiddly before. You would have either had to place them individually or use the paint tool, which is not as reliable, and you didn't have the level of control over things like the spacing that you have now. So by dragging in those trees, I can duplicate that path off, and you can see how rapidly I've made up a little kind of road leading up to our lovely castle and our landscape. So it's looking really, really good already. If you haven't tried this Icelandic template, I would 100% recommend giving it a go. You can use it for lots of different things. And it really is a stunning landscape and you can explore this in full screen. Hang around to the end of the video though, because I'm going to show you some really cool stuff that I did using AI technology to enhance these images even further in a moment. One of the things I really love about Twinmotion is the ability to tell stories. As a visualization artist, I really quite enjoy doing fantasy scenes like this, something that obviously my day job as an architect I don't normally get the chance to do, but I do find it an amazing way to perfect my skills and also kind of really spark my creativity. So look, even if you're a hobbyist or just someone who's into 3D graphics and visualization, Twinmotion is 100% recommended for you. It's got a very, very nice interface. And the fact is we can create all these things like atmosphere, change the weather, make it snow, and just do unbelievable renderings. I also find that the speed and real-time nature of the software just means that I can explore what-if scenarios and things like different weather and sort of rendering and lighting conditions that I wouldn't dream of doing in other software. Because it's so quick and easy to do, and the fact that each image has its own settings, that is unbelievable. This means that you can kind of set up lots of different variations with no bother at all. So my scenes really come together. I think it's time to render out a couple of the final stills, and I'm going to show you some wonderful tweaks that we can do using AI technology using Krea. Now, Krea AI is a bit of software that I've been using for a little while now to tweak my renders, and I really recommend giving it a go. You can try it for free, but basically all you do is on the enhance side, you drag and drop your image in. You'll notice that it really adds an absolute ton of detail. You know, look at the difference on things like the castle and the landscape as well. Here's that snowy image. Look at the before, there's after. It really enhances the sky and the texture on the trees and the snow. So Krea AI is something that I can thoroughly recommend to you as a way to tweak your images even more. Now look at these images as they fade from one to the other. I think you'll agree the AI version has a lot more detail as well. So exciting technology. Okay, so next up is render layers, one of my favourite new features of Twinmotion and one that I've been after for a while. So to explore this incredible new feature, we're going to take one of the lovely demo scenes by one of my favourite Twinmotion artists, Paul Rimser. He was featured in my book and he's a fantastic guy. He does incredible work, so do check out his Twinmotion and rendering channel. So really nice little scene, very straightforward, just a lovely building in this landscape here. Now I can't resist just before, as I kind of actually finish this off, in enhancing the landscape a little bit more. So what you'll notice when you scroll down in the properties panel now, that every single object has the ability to be assigned something called a layer ID. Now we have a number of these layer IDs, up to 5 available, which is plenty. And basically each object, so for example this whole vegetation object here can be assigned, I can just click enable for layer ID and just sort of put it into one of those different IDs that I'm using. Now just remember that they're not actually labelled, so just remember which ones you're actually using. So just things like the project I'll put into one, the landscape into another, and you'll see how this will play out in a moment when I actually kind of render out some visuals. Now at any time, the beauty is I can kind of keep working on my scene, and the really nice thing is when you duplicate objects, they stay in the layer that the original one was in, of course. So that's a really nice aspect to this, so make sure you do the layering quite early on. So I'm just doing a bit of tweaking now. I think what we'll do is actually look at the pre-made views. So these are the views that came with the file itself. These are really quite stunning. I like the aspect ratio here, quite nice, very architectural views, but I'm going to kind of create a few of my own. So just pop back out into the editor view if you like, move my camera around and get that nice sort of cinematic view of the building over the lake there. So let's click onto the G key just to hide those sort of cameras and things. Click on the plus mode in our images just to set that new image. And now I'm going to go into the render mode and set that to 4K. But don't worry, I'm going to talk about the Filmback, also a new feature, a little bit later as well. Okay, so it's looking pretty good. Let's maybe just set up one more view. So I'm going to pan around with those lovely mountains behind, get a bit closer to the building this time, and get that sort of panoramic view looking the other way. Click on the plus sign, so incredibly easy to set these views up. I love the way you can keep adjusting the camera and refining, and then just go back and either add another view or refine the existing views. Okay, so let's go for it. So we're ready to kind of export some of our views. All we need to do then is when we're ready, we can go and just review those images if we want to. Nice little selection of images there. And let's go to click the export tab. Now, load in the images that you want to export. Let's go for these 3. And just before you actually do click export, just remember to go into details and turn on the layers. You'll see them enabled already. So basically you do need to actually tick those layers if you want them to be actually rendered out. So that's quite important. Things like the sky will also be included on its own layer by default. So that's an additional layer on top of the 5 standard ones. So when you're ready, you can click export. Just remember to create yourself a folder. Always a good idea to be nice and neat and tidy. And let's get these exported and then review what we get out the other side. Okay, so of course one of the beauties of Twinmotion is the absolute speed of rendering, and here's what we get. So we get the lovely rendered image itself. We also get the image layers. So as you can see, these are all separate. So what I'm going to do now is I've opened up Photoshop and basically I've dragged in my original layer plus all the other layers. Okay, you can see that I've got the base layer there, and I can easily set up things like image masks, and then that means that I can just select the required area, and if I do want to, then let's go down to my original image, and it means that I can use things like hue and saturation or vibrance or things like that I want to do to tweak this image, but really I can only affect the building. So just watch this. You can see that here I'm just affecting the landscape and coming up with some rather weird colours, but you know, I can desaturate or just sort of take down the tones of those colours a little bit and do some final post-editing using my favourite image editing software. So this is incredible. It just means you get a lot more flexibility over your images, and things like the ability to kind of mask off just the landscape, just the glass, you know, people, trees, cars, or whatever it is you wanted will be an absolute bonus for lots of visualization artists. I know that this is an advantage that some other software had for a while, and Twinmotion has now got this wonderful feature. So if you are new to Twinmotion, this will be something that you will love. If you're an existing user for Twinmotion, you'll probably love it even more because it just allows you that complete flexibility over post-editing. So definitely quite fun to do. Just watch some tutorials on how to use these masks and basically edit your images as well. Just want to show you how easy this makes to incorporate AI technology. So again, here I've taken the base image into Krea. I've done some enhancing. Look at those mountains. They just look so much better than the bulk standard rendered mountains from the scene. So basically I've downloaded that image, I'm going to drag it in and drop it onto the scene there, but I may not want to enhance everything. So the real beauty of this is I can basically drag the order of my layers around. Now I can go up to select just those mountains and environment. So let's just get the right one. Okay, there it is. So I'm going to right click, basically create a selection. And now basically I can go down and basically mask out everything else apart from those mountains in the backdrop. So I've used the Krea AI technology to do a wonderful enhancement of those beautiful mountains. And they look way better, but I didn't really affect anything else on the scene, perhaps because I didn't want to. So things like the water and the mountains, that's really been nice to enhance on this particular little kind of example. But don't forget, using these layer masks means you have total flexibility. So, as I say, pure visualization artists I think will really love this new technology, and the layers will mean that you can basically spend endless hours fiddling in your favorite image editing software at creating the perfect image. So the next big feature I want to talk about is bloom and flares. Now these have been added to within the ambient settings of the camera panel, and wait until you see this. Now this was a little scene that I created for the recent Twinmotion challenge, which was a really fun little project to do. I kind of created this idea of this sort of almost like Fast and Furious kind of road racers illegal street meetup. And you can see, you know, the scene was nice in itself. But now, watch this. We're going to basically go and enhance these headlights here. Now, don't forget, if you want to enhance that particular material of just the light, just make sure you apply to object rather than replace material. That means that you can drag it just onto those headlights, not the glass of the kind of windscreen as well. So here we go. We'll go to camera. First of all, actually, we're going to just go into bloom and flares and just watch the different settings on these. So once you slide up the bloom intensity, that's when you really start to notice these kind of lens flares. And there's a whole little range of presets here. So you don't need to do anything too technical, just choose your favorite one and they look pretty awesome. So let's go ahead and kind of like do the Porsche as well. I've got those sort of flashing lights potentially, or just do normal ones. You can see already I've got these incredible lens flares just added. So let's just add that to the final kind of car here, our Audi e-tron. And, you know, these are my favourite cars, by the way. So, you know, it's always good fun to kind of work with your favourites. The Audi R8, Audi e-tron, and a classic Porsche. Why not? Now, you'll notice that once the bloom intensity is turned right up, you really, really notice it. So I recommend you do that, and then you can always tone it down a little bit towards the end as well. Now, also, we've got this wonderful lens flares slider that we can actually introduce as well. So basically, you can really improve the quality of images like this, really pump pump it up for this particular rendering here. And I'm going to render out a couple of images to just show you how this looks as a final render. Don't forget also the other really nice thing to do to incorporate your composition grid, just to kind of get those rule of thirds and those really perfect proportions on your videos and your animations as well. Good, okay, so let's go ahead and set up a couple of images, render these out and see how this looks with this amazing bloom and flare. So next up, we're going to talk about Filmback. Filmback is a technology that allows you to use real-world camera sensor data to basically emulate the idea of basically motion capture and real sort of cinematic cameras that are used in the real world. So when you go to the camera settings, if you scroll down within the properties panel, you're going to find a new Filmback section where you can click enable. Now in here are lots of preset different cameras that you can use, things like DSLR, even things like an IMAX camera as well, which is pretty amazing. So as well as sort of combining that with things like the bloom and the flare, you know, go in and have a little play around with these amazing sort of cinematic lenses and camera Filmbacks. Now this means that you can kind of recreate some of the look of your favourite films in terms of both proportion, but also, you know, the actual kind of like zoom and things like depth of field as well are included in those. So definitely fun to play around with, and I'm really glad that we've got those now. We've obviously got all the custom settings that we've always had, where you can kind of like literally set any kind of proportion and technology as well. So the Filmback is definitely something I think cinematic sort of photographers will really enjoy when making movies. So it's really easy to use. Just go into one of your media. For example, this video here, I go into the settings and now I can actually select the correct Filmback based on the entire video. So it's really easy to kind of achieve, and you can see that I can actually kind of like change things like the camera sensor width, as well as the sensor height as well. So you've got complete control over the proportions and the kind of quality of that image as well. Now really that combined with things like these wonderful bloom and lens flares just means we've got this amazing ability to create some stunning, particularly nighttime images, where things like lens flares and kind of, you know, lighting flares really kick in. So let's have a look at this rendered video. It's going to be super fun to review this scene that I made for the Twinmotion challenge once again. And here I'm actually playing it in real time. How about that? So what do you think of the new features of Twinmotion 2024? Now I think I'm going to save the other features for another video another time. So if you are new around here, would love you to subscribe to the channel and do reach out to me if I can help you at all with anything Twinmotion related. Thanks for watching everybody, and I'll see you in the next one.